name is Marcus Alston. I am the host of the Mindful Athletes podcast. We are joined today by Eric Kussin with Same Here Global. How are you doing, Eric?
Good, Marcus. Thanks for having me, bud.
Appreciate you. And we'll dive right in. Could you just give us a little bit of background information on your journey, especially with mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the interesting thing is mental health wasn't on my radar screen whatsoever for most of my life and then most of my career. So I was an athlete growing up, played every sport there was: football, baseball, basketball, soccer, hockey, lacrosse. Went on to college, specialized in one as a walk-on at Cornell University, and then went into these senior management roles. Obviously didn't start in senior management, but started at the NBA league office. Worked for a guy named Mark Tatum, who's now the deputy commissioner of the NBA. David Stern was a commissioner at the time, had an incredible run there. Then worked for a number of WNBA, NBA, and then NHL teams. And so I was with the Florida Panthers, a team that just made the Stanley Cup final. New ownership group had just come in, purchased the team, and got along famously with their ownership group and really enjoyed the vision that they had. And so left where I was and living in New York, working for the Devils, to go down to Florida to become the chief revenue officer with the Panthers. Couldn't ask for a better situation. Single guy living in South Beach, making more money I'd ever made before in my life, getting a chance to build a team from scratch. So you think of high highs, and the low that came from that was 6 months in, my brain and my body just shut down on me. I couldn't look at people in the eyes and have conversations. Couldn't think extemporaneously, couldn't look at a menu and order off of the menu to tell someone what my order was. So the recall wasn't there. My executive functioning completely went away, was agoraphobic. And obviously at that point you have to leave your job because you got to figure out what's going on with you, because your ability to function goes out the window. It led to 2.5 years of absolute dysfunction, trying 50 different psychotropic drug combinations, laying in a bed, staring at the ceiling, not watching TV, not listening to the radio, just waiting for meds to kick in, because I thought that I had a chemical imbalance and I was waiting for chemicals to balance out the imbalance. That led to TMS therapy. I did 23 sessions of that, 23 days in a row. I'm not talking down TMS therapy. Didn't work for me. And unfortunately, I developed the first ever suicidal ideation I'd ever had. So I went inpatient to a psych ward, where a top doctor with a Harvard degree told me that I tried everything there was, and my last resort was to do ECT, or what we know from the movies is shock therapy. And I left the hospital after 12 sessions of shock therapy, feeling no better than I had the 2.5 years prior, being called this thing called treatment resistant, thinking my life is over because I've tried everything there is. And I fortunately met a doctor who practices integrative psychology, and I learned all about the brain-body connection. And we pieced together that I had a long trauma history with my brother, cancer twice, and septic shock, and kidney transplant, and coma for 3 months, and broke his femur bone in one accident, cracked his head open in another accident. And it was just one thing after another in my childhood that I was constantly living in a sympathetic nervous system response state that essentially wired me for, great that you're accomplishing all these things on the court, on the field, on the ice, and then in the office, but it's avoiding all these things that happened to you as a child that you witnessed and that you watched. And eventually it built up so much that it tore me down. And so once I learned how to heal, once I learned the proper options that were out there to start to heal my affected neurobiology and physiology and nervous system, I decided to bring that to the space of the nonprofit world and started hashtag Same Here Global, for anyone who wants to search it. But Same Here is an American Sign Language sign, means you and I were the same. It's meant to cut through the clutter of 1 in 5 people are mentally ill. Who are the people who have depression, anxiety, PTSD? And instead say divorce, job loss, breakup, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, bullying, cyberbullying, sickness of loved ones, loss of loved ones. There's not a person on this planet who doesn't deal with mental health challenges, because we all, Marcus, I was saying to you before the call that my grandmother's in hospice right now. Find me a person that isn't impacted by what goes on in life, and then that starts to creep into their daily functioning. So the idea behind Same Here is it's not 1 in 5, it's 5 in 5. Mental health lives across a continuum. Everyone is impacted. We need to talk about it in that way, and not in a way to say, stop stigmatizing us, but instead all of us are part of this group.
Love that, Eric. That was well said. And I know it was very powerful. Might have been very tough for you to deal with those traumas, but sound like you through those challenges you kind of found your purpose, in life and trying to change the stigma around mental health in athletics. So, kind of segueing into my next question, could you maybe share a little bit more about what Same Here Global is focusing on, maybe some of the programs that you have going on?
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because, right, like my background is sports, being an athlete and then working in sports. So the natural focus would be sports. Sports is one of our areas of focus. But if you zoom out for a second, if we believe in this 5-and-5 concept, we wouldn't be walking what we talked if our programs were first sports and sports only, right? And I love that there's organizations like Alston for Athletes, like Hidden Opponent, like Morgan's Message that are for athletes, for sports. We have a sports component, right? We have 5 areas of focus. So our K through 12 programming is called Same Here Schools. Our college programming is called Same Here Sit Downs. Our office programming is called Same Here Safe. Our sports team and league program, not surprisingly, is called Same Here Sports. And then our service department program for first responders, military, is called Same Here Service. And so we go in immersively into these populations and provide everything from assembly programs to professional development to town halls to working environments like workshops and facilitation groups, and then have technologies that allow them to continue with the resources that we provided with them, because the honest answer is we all can't replicate ourselves and live in these places. So we do have to train the trainer in a way, get the culture changed in a certain way so that they're looking at mental health in more of this collaborative approach, and then use that to open up conversations that allow that psychological safety to continue on.
I agree. I think it definitely starts with coaches, administration, and how we can equip them tools to better, help their athletes. And that kind of segues into my next question. How has your mentality as an athlete transfer into your, daily life? One of my philosophies is I really see entrepreneurship very similar to sport, where there's in entrepreneurship, I'm sure there's a lot of highs and then you'll get some lows. Whereas same in sport, where you might be on a 3-game winning streak and then you might go on a 5-game losing streak. So there's those highs and lows. So I just wanted to see how that mentality is transferred into in your life after sports.
So what makes each of us good athletes, right? And good is a relative term, right? What makes each of us good is we're usually adept at one, some, or many skill sets, right? You take someone, maybe I'm biased, of Michael Jordan, right? I think he's the greatest player of all time. Some people who are younger than me will say LeBron James. That's fine. We could have that argument in a separate one. But Michael Jordan combined supreme talent with a supreme desire and effort, right? And in my era, the guy who had supreme talent but didn't have supreme desire and commitment was Shawn Kemp. They were athletic in the same way. They could jump through the roof and dunk in certain ways that just no other person on the planet looked like a video game. But Jordan came with that mentality every single day of, I'm going to rip your head off, right? So there was a competitive nature to Jordan that put him heads and heels above, even though he had the talent as well. He was able to combine that in. Now, certain people, their skill sets are attention to detail, right? Or being a great teammate, or having a high IQ and seeing the floor or the court in certain ways. And so if I'd say, and a lot of those things aren't always, something that you learn. Oftentimes they're God-given, right? Or whatever your belief system is, universe given, right? And so why are we born with certain things? For whatever reason, from the time I was a little kid, I was a competitive SOB. Like, my friends would play basketball, and if I could beat them handily, I would say, okay, you have a 10-point lead to 11 because I want to play against the hardest possible, outcome I can, right? And I don't want you to think that means I'm such a great basketball player. In a self-deprecating way, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I would create scenarios that whatever the situation was, it was hard to overcome, and I wanted to do it, right? So if competitive juices is my, let's say, separator when it comes to being on the basketball court when I played college basketball, it was, if there's a rebound, it doesn't matter that I'm only 6'4", I'm going to position myself in a certain way, body up against the guy in a certain way, that I'm going to grab that rebound over them, even though they're taller and they can jump higher than me. I want it more than them, right? So I took that which naturally comes to me, and let's just say maybe athletically I'm not as gifted as someone else, right? So in the same way here, when you're talking about building from an entrepreneurship, a business, you can say maybe I'm not adept at finding investors in a certain way or asking for money on donors in a certain way. But what I am is I'm a dog on a bone when it comes to that way that it's being described as wrong. And I want to help us change the narrative on that. And I'm going to work my ass off to partner with everyone that I can, to form relationships with everyone I can, because the person that I'm competing with is not a person, it's a societal understanding. So I made this understanding, and I should call it misunderstanding of how we look at this topic. I made it my enemy, right? When I'm looking at your shirt with hidden opponent, there's an opponent there. When you've got an opponent, then you're that dog on the bone, and whatever your skill set is, you're able to take that from sports, transfer that to what your new discipline is. Okay, even though I'm not competing against 5 other guys on the court, I'm competing against all the erroneous ways we're being taught about what mental health is, so that I can make sure people get the best help possible at the highest level. So I hope that answers your question in terms of the parallels between the two.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely relate on that, especially the Jordan mentality, kind of having like that killer instinct and that mindset where it's just like, you're going to dedicate your life potentially to this cause, and you're just like, no matter what, I'm going to figure it out, and no one's going to stop me, along the way. So I can definitely relate to that mindset. And this brings back to the next question here. Either when you were playing, I know this was definitely a little bit earlier on, whereas mental health might have not been one of the topics in sports, but did you when you played, did you ever see any coaches help athletes with their mental health, or did you see some coaches that may have been more supportive towards their athletes as others? Would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, look, I mean, the topic of mental health when I was playing sports growing up, high school, college, it wasn't a discipline that was separated out, right? We go to classes in school, and you go to physical education classes. You don't go to mental health education classes. You had some health teachers who took an interest in it. And the joke that I give, not that it's funny, haha joke, but joke as in how ridiculous is this? If we learn anything about mental health when we were in health classes, we learned depression means sadness, anxiety means nervousness, PTSD happens to service people, and the kids who need help are the problem kids, right? Like, couldn't be worse understanding and explanation of what mental health is in terms of pointing us in the wrong direction. So the coaches that I saw were the most adept at positive mental health wouldn't necessarily have called it mental health at the time. They would have called it things like leadership, right? And commitment and attitude and focus, right? And so it was this, I always think that the best coaches find this balance between pushing you towards the edge, making you comfortably uncomfortable so that you're changing along the way, you're growing, but they also know how to give you a big hug at the same time, right? And so I'll take it out of sports and into sports business just for the purposes of this conversation. David Stern, who wasn't my direct boss, but someone that I liaised with a good amount early in my career, he was one of the best coaches at doing that. He knew how to push your buttons, and he knew how to give you a little jab, and he knew how to talk smack to you. And at the same time, he knew how to show you, like, you're doing a kick-ass job right now. And that balance between the two, I think, is where you find your stride as an athlete, as a performer in the office. Is, okay, he's not going to rip me if I make a mistake. He wants me to grow. He wants me to learn from this. He wants me to take chances. She wants me to take chances. But if I mess up, he or she's going to be there to support me. I better not mess up the same way, too many times. But he knows that I'm going to learn from him. I'm going to bank what I learn and then move from there. That's not the stuff that we're talking about now, about psychological safety and social emotional learning and self-care and all the stuff that's the buzz terms now. But I think those were the early stages of it, of, how do you push someone and then support them at the same time?
Definitely. That well said. And, unfortunately with coaches, I feel like in today's society, there's just always that win or die like kind of mentality where you don't find a lot of coaches like what you just described that not only push you to be great, but if you are struggling or, let's say you scored 30 points and had 3 touchdowns or whatever, they come and, give you a hug or a pat on the back. Good job, let's keep this up. So,
The environments, man, it's a beautiful thing. You've probably seen it throughout your career, is like there's certain coaches that the players, it's not every player, because not every coach is going to connect with every single player, but there are coaches, like my coach in high school, he's still the same coach at the same school, and the alum come back every single Thanksgiving like it's a family, right? He created a family environment that he kicked our ass. We were doing things back then that coaches now would not be allowed to do, with the different wall sits forever long and running. I won't call them the word, but let's call them ladders up and down after we missed free throws at the end of practice after we already had our ass kicked. But he loved us too, right? And he was there for us, and he was a support for us. So we come back for him. That's, to me, those are the best environments that there are, is pushing you out of your comfort zone to get better, because we needed to run, because we needed to be able to outrun the other team. But he also was there if we needed him.
Yeah. I think we definitely need more players, coaches in athletics for sure. I know we're almost at time, so I want to wrap up with one last question. So when you were playing collegiate sports at Cornell, if you had any advice to give your younger self, what would that be?
So it's an interesting question that you ask off the heels of the previous question about coaches, because when you're a competitive SOB, so even going to the question before that, you're willing to do whatever the coach tells you to do, right? Which is run up and down stadium stairs. Okay, coach, why am I running up and down stadium stairs if a basketball court is flat? And even if his simple science explanation of it was, well, you're going to tax your cardiovascular system in a way that you're never going to have to do on a flat court. That means you're going to be able to outrun everyone else that you're playing against on the court and out hustle them. That's why we want you to do this. Okay, sign me up, right? So we listened to coaches when I was in college, when I was in high school, and you loved listening to them because they were giving you that competitive advantage. I wish, and it combines again with yet another one of your questions, I wish I was either challenging myself, or there were coaches knowledgeable enough at the time to carry myself to say, Eric, when you're running up and down those stadium stairs, there's also an invisible backpack that you're carrying that's heavy. And if you don't reach into that backpack and work on those things, guess what? Eventually, running up and down those stairs, you're going to collapse. And it may not happen while you're playing the 4 years at the school here. It may not even happen your first 4 years when you're out of college and you're working. But eventually, if you don't work on that bag, it continues to get heavy, you're going to fall to the ground. And so my crash that I shared at the beginning that happened in Florida at 34, 35 years old happened because my bag kept getting heavier and heavier and heavier. But I was so focused on coaches telling me to run stairs. I need to go get the next job in sports. Here's what I need to do to accomplish the next achievement so that I get recognized, so I get the next career move. And I didn't focus on what was building silently. Stress and trauma build silently in our nervous system, and we need to work exercises to clear that stuff out, just like we do the exercises of running up and down the stadium stairs.
Love that. Couldn't say it better myself. It's awesome, Eric. Awesome. Well, that concludes this episode of Mindful Athletes. Eric, any last thoughts? Do you want to maybe share your social media pages or any new projects you got coming up?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Thank you for offering. So we our social media channels are at @samehere_global. So same here, SAMEHERE, again, American Sign Language sign. You and I were the same. You can find us there, Instagram, Twitter, even Facebook. Reach out to me, Eric Kussin on LinkedIn. I answer individual messages. And from a project standpoint, I would just add, there's so many things, right? Each of us could talk about, but one thing in particular is we just finished a course called STAR certification. STAR is an acronym. stands for Stress and Trauma Active Release and Rewiring, or a gym for the brain. It's a 16 module, 22-hour course. And it's got the monsters in the space in it. And I say that not as like a braggadocious thing. I say that as if you want to learn from the people who know their stuff, Stephen Porges from Polyvagal is in it. Vincent Folletti, who chaired the ACE Adverse Childhood Experience Studies, in it. So it's quick 4 hours. 4 hours may not sound quick, but on the science of how stress and trauma impact us. And then it's the other 12 sessions are all of these. Imagine having a different personal trainer in biceps, triceps, shoulders, abs, right? So it's different trainers who invented each of these different non-medication modalities. So if you're a trainer out there, if you're a coach, even if you're a parent or a student athlete, and you want to learn about brain body and what the exercises are that are out there, it's on our site under STAR exercises and the STAR course.
Awesome. Make sure you guys go check that out. Well, that pretty much wraps things up. Just want to thank Eric again for joining us. And please tune in next week where we'll have a conversation with Krista Patterson, the Associate Director of Alston for Athletes. This is Marcus Alston, the host of Mindful Athletes, signing out.